What up, nerds? My name is Leslie Smith. Welcome to the Nerdy Narrative, where today I will be bringing you some haunting Halloween recommendations. These are books that I have read over the last few years that just stuck with me. It gave me some sort of feeling, or it took something that I encounter in daily life and make it feel more sinister. Something that I will never look at again in the same way. Just something that gave me a lasting impact. So if you've been shopping around for a really scary book to put on your TBR for October, stay tuned for the 5 recommendations I've put together for you today. First on the list is Widow's Peak by Richard and Billy Chismar. This novella contains a ghost story that is absolutely going to make you afraid of the dark. Our main character, Thomas Livingston, is an author who has written several books about the supernatural and the unknown. Thomas has managed to secure permission from the owner of the Widow's Point Lighthouse to stay over the weekend in the lighthouse to write a book about his experience there. The lighthouse is located in a town called Harper's Cove. The residents there are convinced that this lighthouse is cursed. Some even claim it's haunted. Widow's Point Lighthouse was originally built in 1838. Its reign of terror began during its construction phase when 3 construction workers mysteriously were killed on site. Nearly 24 other unexplained deaths happened here over the next 2 decades. In addition to the deaths, there were also disappearances, suicides, and tons of other unexplained occurrences. Finally, in 1988, there was a security fence erected around the lighthouse and it was permanently shut down. Despite being the first person to set foot in this lighthouse in 3 decades, Thomas Livingston is going to discover very quickly that he is not alone. You just can't go wrong with a good old-fashioned ghost story. The reason why this particular story has stuck with me over the years is because I listened to it on audiobook. This was in the days before I had Bluetooth headphones, so I had my armband on that I wear when I go running and I had my phone attached to it so I could use my corded headphones. So as I was mopping and bringing my arm back, and it got to a really chilling part of this story and my cord came undone and it tapped me under my arm. It scared the absolute stuffing out of me. I stopped the audiobook, I finished mopping, and then I went and sat in the courtyard in the full-blown sunlight and finished listening to the book out there. There was no chance that was going to happen any other way. The next book on this list is called The House of Little Bones by Beverly Lee. This is yet another tale that features an author as the main character. David Lansdowne finds himself in a bit of a sticky situation. Someone managed to snap a compromising photo of David smooching on another man. That in and of itself sounds harmless, except this other man happens to be his publisher's son. David decides the best thing to do is get out of Dodge, take a few weeks off, and maybe write another novel while he does that. David finds what he feels is the perfect house to hide out in. It sits on a desolate British moor and it has a whole wall that is nothing but windows that looks over this moor. David hasn't even really settled in yet before strange things begin to happen. But the one that stands out to me, that creeped me out, gave me chills, and made sure that this was another book that I would not be reading at night. He gets up that first morning and finds a finger bone on the table. This creepy little tale just really showcases how the sins of the past can haunt the living and the dead. My third recommendation is yet another novella called The Mist by Stephen King. This is a very popular story. I believe it has been made into a movie and I'm sure you all have heard of it, but the reason why this particular story sticks with me is ever since I read it, if I see any kind of dense fog and I can go the opposite direction to avoid it, I'm absolutely going to do so. This story takes place on an island. For the most part, the people don't live there year-round. They just go there to vacation. And one lazy summer morning, folks notice there's some clouds coming in, a storm hits, it causes some damage. The residents pull out their chainsaws, they head outside to start clearing trees, and they start noticing this very dense mist coming across the water to them. The lasting impression that I pulled from this novella is, one, the fear of fog or mist. It's just one of those classic fear of the unknown stories that's just going to have your heart racing, your blood pounding. It is just fantastically creepy, full of suspense and dread. I loved it. Next on this list of haunting Halloween reads is The Exorcist House by Nick Roberts. I read and reviewed this one recently and it is just one of the best scary stories I've read in a long time. The year is 1994. Daniel Hill and his family have purchased a farmhouse that they had renovated on some land that they're going to live in for a while with the intention to flip it. Daniel was lucky enough to find out there were going to be a couple of major power plants built in the area, and he thought that was going to make prices skyrocket, and he wanted to capitalize on it. So if you're a fan of fresh start stories where the family picks up and moves to a new location and things start to happen, this one definitely belongs at the top of your list. Once the Hill family moves into the newly renovated farmhouse, at first they're just taken in by its beauty, the rustic feel of living on a farm, but then they notice that the basement door has been nailed shut. It hasn't been done haphazardly, it was done intentionally, which unfortunately led to Daniel's curiosity having to be satiated with knowing why. So what does he do? Yeah, you guessed it. He pulls the nails out, goes into the basement, and discovers a hidden room that has a well in it that's been boarded over and sealed with crucifixes. Oh my goodness, if there was ever a book where all hell breaks loose, it's this one. My final haunting Halloween recommendation is one I have been recommending for years, ever since I read the book actually, and while it is part of a series, it is a trilogy, you can read just the first book and be perfectly fine. In fact, you may not want to read further once you read the first one. The Patience of a Dead Man by Michael Clark. I read this story for the first time 3 or 4 years ago now. I will never forget the level of fear I experienced when reading this book. There were so many nights that I did not sleep well. I would not walk through the house if the lights were off. I was afraid. Those memories are still extremely fresh today. The stair scene is one of the ones I'm always talking about when I talk about this book. In fact, recently at Universal Studios, I was at Halloween Horror Night standing in line for one of the haunted houses, and I was telling a guy about this book and my experience while reading it. Tim Russell is a man who has just lost everything. He's gone through a divorce. Custody of his children was given to his wife. She took half of the construction business that he owned and operated, so he's starting from scratch. He finds this ratty old farmhouse on some land in New Hampshire. The goal is he's going to move into it, renovate it, and flip it himself to be able to make enough money to get a new business formed and off the ground. One thing I've always found extremely interesting and enticing about a scary story is when it contains some seed of truth. The farmhouse that is described and featured in great detail in this book is actually based on a real house in New Hampshire that the author and his family lived in when he was younger. I tell you that because some of the descriptions of the house itself are absolutely terrifying. It's one of those types of stories that when night falls and there are shadows in the corners of your room, you're going to give yourself a headache from staring so hard into that corner to make sure there's nothing actually there. You will not be disappointed if you want a book that's going to scare the stuffing out of you and leave a lasting impression on you. You will never ever forget. And that is going to do it for my haunting Halloween recommendations videos. I've read a lot of creepy stories over the last few years, but these are the 5 that top the list of the ones that left a lasting impression on me or has permanently made me scared of something. So if an unforgettable spooky read is what you're looking for this October, these books are certain to deliver if you dare to read them. Thank you so much for being here and watching today. I hope that if you decide to pick up one of these haunting reads, you enjoy it just as much as I did. Again, thank you for watching. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next one.